You're live.
I think we are live
from Massachusetts. It's Monday night.
Welcome to Monday Night Live. I feel like we used to say that Monday Night Live?
Sunday night.
Sunday Night Live.
We used to do Sunday night.
Hey everybody.
Welcome, you guys. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for coming and hanging out. We're gonna have a little discussion. Look, somebody's in Massachusetts.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Are you hearing the wind?
The wind is crazy, guys. There's our cuckoo clock if you want to be amused by that. Earlier tonight, I went to go to Best Buy, and I get there, and it's all dark, and I walk up to the door, and the doors don't open, and there's a handwritten note with a Sharpie on the door that says, "No power. We're closed."
Oh, my goodness.
So I think, like, the wind is knocking. I saw a tree was down and that sort of thing.
Hi from windy PA. Pennsylvania, we've got Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. We have Minnesota, North Carolina. Wow, so many places.
Yeah, England, it's getting late there. Thanks for staying up to hang out with us. What, it's like midnight there?
We went live earlier in the day last week, so we thought we'd try to catch a different
time zone slash
people
shift.
Who are working or getting off work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, oh, hey from Scotland. Oh, my goodness. So fun. Thank you guys for being here. We were just vlogging, bet you couldn't guess that. And I was like saying, I really hope I get a second wind. I've just been feeling kind of weak and shaky the last hour or two, but Peter brought me coffee.
And she ate a little, and
so if I seem like zoning out, it's just because I feel weird, but we're all good. We're not.
Oh, sorry. Just pulling up the comments on my phone.
We are gonna just press on. We're gonna press on with this. So we have gotten a lot of comments about on all the platforms. Have you seen the trailer for 5 Feet Apart? Or some of the questions have been, have you seen the trailer for 6 Feet Apart? So I don't know if there are 2 different movies coming out. I only know about the one. I'm kidding. So yes. Okay. So
we can get into that.
We'll get into it.
Okay. So
the answer is yes. We have seen the movie. I mean, we haven't seen the movie.
We haven't seen the movie. It hasn't come out yet. I think some people have seen like pre-screenings, right?
I think so.
But we've watched the trailers. We have not, just up front, we haven't read the book.
No.
But we're going to
We're
going to give our thoughts on the whole like spectrum of kind of the phenomenon of a Hollywood movie about a disease that people are fighting.
So like Peter said, we haven't seen anything except the trailers. And so I do know a few of my friends have already seen it, like the pre-screening and that sort of thing. And there are, they've written blogs and that sort of thing after they've seen the movie. So if you want to read an actual review after they saw the movie, this is not it. We haven't seen it. Okay, so I think the biggest, if I'm only allowed to say one thing, like, Mary, what is your one thing you want to say about this movie? I would say we should come at this movie as what it is, a movie. It is not a medical journal. It's a Hollywood interpretation of a life impacted by cystic fibrosis. And so we shouldn't take medical advice from it. We shouldn't assume that everybody who has this disease has this, a life that looks this way. And we shouldn't prescribe that people should live the way that this movie talks about.
Well, I think Mary and I were talking about it right before we went live, and we actually just watched the trailers right before we went live so we can have it fresh in our mind. And as we think about it, so just to give kind of like a backdrop, if you don't know anything about it, there's a Hollywood movie coming out called 5 Feet Apart, and it's about 2 people with CF who, I mean, from the trailers and from the storyline, they fall in love, and it's kind of like this Hollywood love story, and yet kind of the big overarching, I mean, every story has that tension and conflict. And
Peter did a master's degree in storytelling, so he's giving the like. Did we just lose power?
What in the world? Our light. That wasn't all of our lights. We're still live. That is weird.
That's bizarre.
Okay, so sorry for the lighting, but
that is weird.
Yeah.
Do you think it's that?
Came unplugged. Let me check it. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Okay, came unplugged. That was weird because we didn't touch it.
Okay, so like every story has a tension
and conflict, and the conflict in the movie is the infection control protocols. The fact that CF patients can't be together because they have these super bugs that, if they share with each other, is detrimental to one another's health.
Right.
So, I mean, if you've been around the Frey Life for a while, we've talked about infection control and why CF patients can't be together and that whole element. So I guess I just wanted to give a backdrop if people didn't know what the movie.
I think that's a great idea. Okay, so I mean, okay, there are obviously 1 million things to say. I think before we go any further, let's recognize one of the main benefits of a movie coming out highlighting cystic fibrosis. I think awareness is amazing. Even if somebody doesn't watch the movie, they're going to see the posts on Facebook. They're going to see the billboard at the movie theater, and they're going to be like, oh, that's interesting. What is that about? They're going to Google it and be like, cystic fibrosis. Oh, I remember reading about that.
And then maybe they'll go on YouTube and Google cystic fibrosis, and they'll find our videos, and then we'll get more views.
Oh my gosh. No, but for real. And then maybe they'll Google cystic fibrosis and they'll see the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. They'll see the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and maybe they'll go to a CF walk, or they'll whatever. You know what I'm saying? Education is always a good thing. Awareness is a good thing.
So the question comes up then. So because education and awareness is a good thing, is it educating and making aware of the right things about CF? And I think that's kind of the looming question that's going around the CF community right now, is like, I feel like most people would say awareness and education is good, but is it educating and making aware of the right things?
Right. And I think that the answer to that is going to be a personal answer. Everybody's going to have kind of a different perspective on that.
Yeah.
I think this is vitally important to remember. So let's all pause what we're doing. If you're on your phone scrolling Twitter while you're watching this, if you're interested to hear the rest of this conversation, I would encourage you to pause what you're doing for just a minute. And remember that everybody in life comes from a different perspective and comes at, with their opinions from a different perspective. Maybe they're coming at this from the perspective of, I had a child with CF who passed away, or I'm pregnant and I know that my baby has cystic fibrosis, or I'm an adult with cystic fibrosis and I've never met anybody else with CF and I feel so alone. Or my perspective, just my experience is, I grew up with cystic fibrosis with a sister with cystic fibrosis. I watched my sister's health decline in our teenage years and decline to the point of having a double lung transplant. And so I've seen cystic fibrosis, at its worst. And so when I come at things, I'm coming from my experience, and that's all that I can come at it with. So that being said, we need to remember that when we're sharing our opinions about things, We're simply sharing from our experience. And so just because we have an opinion about, say, this movie, it doesn't mean that that's the only opinion or that that's the right opinion.
Yeah.
And so I think that we need to like ultimately just come at things graciously, saying no, there's never going to be the perfect portrayal of cystic fibrosis, because cystic fibrosis looks so different in everybody's life. And so it's not going to be this perfect documentation of what does it look like to live with cystic fibrosis. Let's teach the world through a Hollywood movie. Of course, that's not what it is.
Yeah. And I know like in the process of this movie, just from what I've read and like seen online, is that, they had a lot of input from
Claire Wineland was like
part of the story and development, all of that. And so in that, there was kind of like, it wasn't just like, let's throw cystic fibrosis into the story and kind of hijack it. And I think at the end of the day, I think that it will be a movie that is probably a better portrayal than most things in Hollywood.
And probably because they really, it appears that they've done research on cystic fibrosis. And I don't know everybody who worked on that movie set, but I would guess that some of them have connections to cystic fibrosis. When you're watching the trailer, you're going to see very familiar things like the Peri-LC Plus nebulizer, certain medications, or the girl has a port. And the girl has a feeding tube.
Transplant scars and that sort of thing. Yeah.
And so I think the next thing that comes to mind is the benefit of seeing familiarity on the screen and what that can do for people.
Yeah.
Like how much it can bring joy to somebody's life to be like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. Now we know that this is an actor and they don't really have a port, but I wanted to tell the story when I was like 9 years old and we were reading the newspaper, and it was an article about a girl with cystic fibrosis who lived like 20 minutes away from me. I have a sister with cystic fibrosis, so I have that like camaraderie, but to read of another person with CF, I was like, what? This is amazing. And so we ended up becoming pen pals. And that idea, there is just nothing like it, knowing that she knows what I'm going through.
And I think that's a lot. I mean, that is like that when we were talking about the tension and conflict in the movie, is I think that probably a lot of CF patients who will want to see it, and I think we'll get into that, is that probably a lot of CF patients won't want to watch the movie.
And we respect that.
And including us. Like, and so there's that whole aspect of, maybe for a lot of people it's too close to home, or even just too close to home and too far from home, like that sort of thing.
Right.
But for a lot of people and a lot of individuals, and we want to recognize that to see that on a Hollywood screen would just be so encouraging and be like that newspaper article that you saw.
So for my day and age, it was reading a newspaper article. And I just imagine for teens or young teens in this day and age, for them, it's seeing a movie, potentially. And so I can totally see, and I remember that feeling. And so I can imagine that there's a lot of teens or adults or kids seeing these trailers going, oh my gosh, I recognize that. And I think that part of that camaraderie is like the best word that I can kind of describe it as. It's like, you get it. Or we don't have exactly the same, like our CF looks very different, but we still get it. So take our vlog, for example. We make, if you're new around here, we make videos on YouTube documenting what our life looks like affected by cystic fibrosis. So a lot of it is, sorry, I got distracted. I started reading comments. I can only do one thing at a time. Okay, so we're showing my medical journey, which looks drastically different than my sister's. And she and I are blood relatives. Like, so of course, a CF looks different in everybody. That goes without saying. But all of that to say, some people love to watch our vlogs who have cystic fibrosis because it's that feeling of like, oh, yes, somebody else who gets it. You get it. And I'm so grateful that there's a platform where we can show cystic fibrosis, our experience, and allow our videos to be that kind of this for somebody. Yeah. Like, you're not alone. Yeah. But there are other people, I've gotten messages from friends with cystic fibrosis who have said, hey, I can't watch your videos all the time because it's too close to home. And you know what? I get it. I totally get that. And the reason I understand that is because I feel that. Yeah. Like I said a few minutes ago, in my young teens, my sister was getting very sick. And watching somebody decline with cystic fibrosis is hard. And so that's why a lot of times we say, like, thank you for joining us on this journey, which is not glamorous at all. Yeah. But
and we also recognize that there are a lot of people who like would not watch our vlogs. And I think so Mary and I were talking about this earlier, that this movie about CF is pretty polarizing for a lot of CF patients, because for some patients it's really exciting, and for others it's there's a lot of critics of it. And I guess for us, I think we're a little more compassionate of the movie because of what we do online, and because we recognize that every CF story is different. Everybody approaches CF with a different perspective. Yep. And like approaches even things like infection control. Yes. And medication and compliance and things like that. Obviously, we advocate on here to prioritize those things and all of that. But I guess what I'm saying is our perspective on CF, there are critics out there on the internet of us that our perspective that we're doing, I don't want to go down this like trail too long, but like there's people who would say like what we do on the internet of putting our lives out there is misrepresenting CF because
it doesn't look the same as what their experience
because of what their experience was, or somebody they know, or what they think, not even just like experience, but like perspective on it. So at the end of the day, everybody's going to have a different experience, a different perspective. And I think it's just important to recognize that that is what cystic fibrosis is. And we always say it on these vlogs, we aren't here to prescribe anything. We're here to describe what our lives look like, and that is one picture. And this movie is one Hollywood portrayal of CF, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, Hollywood is Hollywood, and a movie is a movie, and they're going to try to make money, and that's what they're doing, and they're doing their job, and hopefully they do it well. That's my perspective on it.
Well, and I think this is just our perspective on a lot of life, I guess. And it goes for even like, hold on, I got to like collect my thoughts here. Basically, take from life what you want to take. Like, if you're reading a book, say you're reading a book and you're like agreeing with a ton of different things about it, and then you get to one thing and you're like, I don't agree with that. Are you going to throw out the entire book, or are you going to learn what you can learn and kind of go ahead and dispose of the rest, but learn what you can learn. It's the idea of eating the watermelon and spitting out the seeds. So my perspective on this movie is I'm going to appreciate it for what it is. It's going to inevitably bring some awareness, whether that's good awareness or bad, whatever. That's each person's decision. But take from it what you will. If you're a person who wants, and this is how I feel about our vlogs, if you're a CF person, or let's just say chronic illness in general, if you are a person who deals with health stuff and you want camaraderie, you want to see other people's journeys, subscribe to our videos, because that's what we show. Go see this movie, because you're going to see a ton of medical stuff in it. But if you are a person who's like, yo, my brain is so full of medical stuff, it can't take any more, and I don't really want to watch your journey, don't subscribe, because that's what we show. Like, it's going to serve a purpose for whoever wants that purpose. And so, like, what?
Well, I was just gonna say, like, one of my thoughts about the whole movie thing, and I guess, like, I just think it's funny, like, the criticisms of it, because at the end of the day, I don't think that the makers of this movie, like, owe the CF community anything.
What do you mean by that?
I don't, like, you know, I don't think that there is, like, that they have a responsibility to represent CF well. Like, that's what I'm just saying. They have their responsibility, their job is to tell a story that people will watch. And
as a movie maker.
And so part of that is this love story between two CF patients. And, you know, I personally don't think that that's something to, like, for within, like, to be glamorized for teenagers with cystic fibrosis. Like, I will say that, and I understand, but at the end of the day, like, I don't think that the movie makers owe us anything, like, to not put that in a movie.
It's kind of like any movie in Hollywood should not be how we run our lives. So if your teenager goes and watches a movie that says you should steal cars and drive them really fast, and it doesn't matter what you hit, just keep driving, of course you don't want your teens to live that way. So you have conversations with them. You say, that is Hollywood, that's drama, that's not how we should live, whatever. I think that this movie can be watched, enjoyed for what it is, and having discussions with people, kind of like we're having now, like.
Yeah, I hope that it can just be a springboard for people watching our videos.
What do you mean?
Peter! I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh, the recurring joke is
that the movie will make us have more views. But no, at the end of the day, I hope that it would just cause people to Google cystic fibrosis and just find out more stories and more real life stories.
So if somebody is curious about somebody who's not an actor, whose port isn't just taped on their chest, like it's a real port, and whose feeding tube actually goes into the guts, not just taped on, they're going to find a myriad of videos on YouTube of tons of different people. We are obviously not the only CF patients on YouTube. They're going to find just hundreds of blogs about cystic fibrosis. They're going to read real life stories. And that can bring real awareness. And also what they're probably going to find is, wow, not all of these people are living the same way as these actors in the movies. What does it really mean to live with cystic fibrosis? All of this.
And I think for me, like, it just, like, brings back to mind just that we need to continually emphasize on our vlogs that every story is different and this is our story. And I mean, we try to, I think it's pretty evident that that's simply what we're trying to do. We do from time to time make some, like, more educational videos, like, you know, Mary's got a video called What is Cystic Fibrosis? And but even, like, and that, like, looks at kind of the bigger picture and But even that video emphasizes that every story is different. Every unique patient has a different experience and
set of symptoms.
And I think, what we're trying to emphasize here and kind of this discussion about the movie is that everybody's going to have a different perspective as well.
And I just looked at my notes on my phone because I had so many notes floating around in my head. I think ultimately realizing that everyone comes from a different set of experiences and perspectives is so vital to living and rubbing shoulders with people in a peaceful way. It's okay to have differing experiences, like the fact that my CF life looks very different than a dear friend who passed away from CF. Like, her life was very different than mine, but we understood that we're coming from different perspectives and all of this. So I think, I don't know.
So many thoughts.
I mean, so many thoughts, guys. And so, okay, so let me get a little personal for a minute.
Please do.
Right before we started this live stream, we were watching the first and the second trailer. And it's portraying, like, some of the things that made me start crying, basically, were watching the decline, of course. It's evident that the female CF person was waiting for a transplant, and then you end up seeing her scar. So she obviously got a transplant. And I know from watching my sister what pre-transplant life looks like and what post-transplant life looks like. And it's not glamorous. It is not, it's hard. And that's what it comes down to. And so as I'm watching it, and you guys know, over the last 2 years, personally, my health has been quite up and down. 2 years ago, my doctor brought up transplant for the first time, and then I was able to regain some lung function, and I was stable for a bit. My lung function is back down. And just walking kind of in CF life, having these declines, and just obviously waking up every morning to clear my lungs, to being exhausted from coughing throughout the day. If you have CF, you obviously know what I'm talking about. I personally, I don't really want to go to a movie theater and watch that right now. So where I'm at is that I support the fact that some people want that camaraderie, and I'm so glad that it exists.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a dear friend who's waiting for a transplant right now, and I actually don't know her opinion on this movie, but I can only imagine if she said to me, "Harry, I just can't watch that right now because it hurts, because I'm living that. It's not just a movie. It's not just a cute love story. This is my life, and it's hard, and it's awful, and it's not glamorous, and it's not romantic." And I would just say to her, that's understandable. And so to those who want to watch it and who find encouragement from it, I'm so glad. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
And to those who aren't in the mental place, maybe I guess from being on this side of the screen and hearing stories over the last 4.5 years from just hundreds of people who have been impacted by cystic fibrosis, getting emails from people, my mom passed away from CF, my daughter passed away from CF, all of these people, that's who comes to mind. And if they find comfort in knowing that this movie's coming out and they want to go see it, I'm so glad it's there for them. And if they find that it's too painful, I respect that. So, all of that to say, I feel the exact same way about our videos.
Yeah.
When somebody is newly diagnosed with CF or their child is newly diagnosed, for some people, they're going to Google and they want input. They want to read all the opinions, or they want to watch all the videos. And so for that reason, I'm glad our videos are there. Other people, when their child is diagnosed, they come home, they're in shock. And the last thing that they need is to watch our videos and see what it looks like for a 29-year-old with CF, because it's going to be really overwhelming for them. And so I don't recommend sending our videos to a newly diagnosed person for that reason. Maybe a year down the road, they need that like camaraderie. And so we're there. We got your back. But I think it's just this matter of everybody is different.
Yeah.
Everybody's different. And that is totally okay.
Yeah. So like all of the views, like all of those perspectives are valid.
Yes.
And, you know, I think it's important for people to recognize that it's valid for Mary not to want to watch that movie. And it's valid for people who are super excited to watch that movie.
Yes.
And I think this is just kind of like part of what it means to be human and to live among your fellow humans is to have that kind of empathy, to see through another person's eyes, and to look at things like 5 Feet Apart, this movie, through all these different eyes and recognize that all these perspectives are valid. And I think that the movie makers are completely valid in putting out whatever they put out at the end of the day. And so at the end of the day, be a good human and like value one another's opinions.
Yeah. Let me look at my notes, see if I forgot anything. And also I'll say this.